Aloha, everybody. I'm Naka Nathaniel, editor-at-large here at Civil Beat, and I'm joined by Chad Blair, who has been covering the state legislature for quite a while, and we want to tap into his expertise as we look ahead at this year's session. Chad, there's a lot of priorities, obviously, on the legislature's list. The top, of course, is what to do with Maui.
It's interesting. When you go into a session, there's often all sorts of priorities. I mean, that's just the way it works there. And you have the House and you have the Senate, and each of them has a minority faction. And you've got the governor and other interests, special interest, labor unions, you name it. This time around, because of the August the 8th fires, the deadly fires on Maui, there is a large degree of alignment among the various departments, agencies, branches of government. And right at the top, of course, is Maui recovery, making it more resilient, preventing, mitigating against future fires coming along, doing something with those power lines. We'll see how that's going to work out. Water issues, zoning issues. At the same time, the Lahaina fires really helped to shine a spotlight on how affordable housing is really just not going away. We all know it's been around for decades. This is a very expensive place to live. But this time, when you had people in Lahaina who lost their homes, who were displaced, and living in hotels, meanwhile the governor and the county of Maui scrambling to find short-term and eventually long-term and permanent housing, it really just underscored, illustrated how that issue has not gone away. And when something like this happens, the fires, I think there's a sense of urgency that we just really, really got to do something. And so I'm seeing all sorts of measures around affordable housing, too many to mention, but in so many ways that will dominate the session. Having said that, there will always be other issues.
Right.
I'm happy to talk about those.
So I'm just curious on the affordable housing on Maui, what are some of the things that are being proposed and what's likely to happen?
Boy, I hesitate to
I hate to ask you to gaze into your crystal ball, but
there's so many measures regarding affordable housing, and some of them have to do with beefing up the current agencies, the state agencies that are in charge of getting more affordable housing. The Hawaii Housing Finance Development Corporation, HHFDC, the Hawaii Community Development Authority, the Rental Housing Trust Fund, ways to get more money to sort of push them to expedite getting those projects ready. Some of it is trying to refurbish existing housing. So here on Oahu, we have a number of those things. It takes a while. I mean, these buildings can be 40, 50 years old. The plumbing's not working. They got to go in there and do that. That's just one example. Others are trying to find a way to help those folks who lost their homes rebuild their homes. And that's going to be very, very complicated because of the zoning laws. And zoning is a county issue primarily, but it's also a federal issue, or rather a state issue. You have the Land Use Commission at the state level, which will be involved. You have the Commission on Water Resource Management, which has the weirdest shorthand that I've ever heard of, seaworm. It sounds like seaworm. Yes. It came from the depths, the seaworm. But you might remember how early on there were reports from Civil Beat about how water may not have been used in an expedited way to help put out those fires. It's a very controversial issue. I'm not going to go there. But it only underscored how important water is. Remember, Lahaina was called the Venice of the Pacific. Yeah. It's kind of hard to believe. Mm-hmm. You look up in those mountains, it's so gorgeous. And there's been a problem with inflow stream standards. Right. Water on Maui is a precious commodity. Right. In many ways fought over more so than any of the other islands. East Maui, West Maui, taro farmers trying to grow their crop. So they're going to try and find ways to make it easier for people to rebuild, but there's just probably too many to mention right now.
Yeah. So is there a consensus, around how to help Maui? I mean, are there groups that are lining up? Is everyone, or are there different factions? Yeah, are people on the same page? Yeah.
When the governor and Mayor Bisson and others announced this plan to help expedite housing, I mean, they're trying to get people into short-term, but also long-term, really permanent housing. Angus McKelvey, of all people, the state senator who lost his home in Lahaina, who has been living in a hotel, raised some concerns. I believe it's this $500 or $600 million fund that the state is setting up. This is separate from helping victims. That's another case altogether. But Angus McKelvey was already saying, gee, I wonder if this is really the best approach. a big fear that you're hearing from so many groups, I think particularly Native Hawaiian groups, is, oh my God, you're just going to open up Lahaina to speculators, to people with money to come in and make it, well, the resort town that it was, but without local people living there. And given the price of land in Hawaii and how difficult it is to build things here, that's a reasonable thing. The governor, we should say, is on record saying he's not going to let those land speculators come in. His attorney general will crack down on that. But there is not widespread consensus on how to do that. Even before Lahaina happened, the governor had an emergency proclamation, which is still in existence, on housing.
Right.
Because that was really his major issue until the fires came along. Prior to that, though, he had to kind of back off. The Sierra Club, a member that was involved in trying to get more affordable housing, was already raising objections about, wait a minute, you're not going to touch that law, are you? I mean, we have these fundamental laws about land trust, the public trust for water. And so he was already getting resistance, including his own person in charge of that, Noni Medeiros, had to step down because she was getting really hate calls from people. So, in a short answer to your question, no, there is not widespread consensus, and you're going to see that spread out. Not everything is going to make it. I always say to these people, 3,000 bills. And that's why my eyes are so blurry and these bags are so prominent. 3,000 bills come over every session, only 10% make them out. Most of them never get heard at all, but they will be fought over very seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with the trying to help the people of Maui is such an important thing. What about the rest of the state? Maui ends up happening, and that's going to be the priority. But there are so many other complicated issues that we have.
Ron Kochi, the Senate president from Kauai, even mentioned other islands have problems too, including his, and everybody has their needs. And there is a concern that there won't be enough revenue to go around, even though federal funds are helping us in the Maui recovery. There's still a question about how strong our economy is. It looks pretty good right now, but we're already looking at cost overruns for hazard pay for workers that were impacted by COVID. That's a couple $100 million right there, just like that. There'll be another Council on Revenues report in March. And you see this all the time. The lawmakers say, let's build this and do that and so forth, and then suddenly the revenue picture changes dramatically. We'll see how that goes. Right now, the U.S. economy is doing great. Right now, Hawaii's economy is on the mend. But there are so many other issues. Here's an issue that I think has come to, it's reached a fever pitch. And this is not giving away a scoop, I hope, but I think Thomas Heaton, our ag reporter, has already reported on this. There is such a renewed focus on invasive species. The coconut rhinoceros beetle, the coqui frog, the little red fire ants. I'm hearing there's now this, there's this parakeet, a ring parakeet? I don't know what it's called. I probably got the name wrong. But the reason why it's gone to a new level is, it's one thing if there's coqui frogs and puna on the Big Island, which there are.
There are so many of them, yes.
Yeah, you're from the Big Island. And but when it gets over here to Oahu, where 2/3 of the population lives, and when it's invading nurseries in Waimanalo and Kaneohe, which it is doing now, then it has reached a new level. And so you're going to see, I think, more money, more positions created to go out and combat these invasive species, more stringent inspection processes. That's another story that is emerging already as a little bit quieter, but something that everybody can relate to. Believe me, if you've tried to sleep through coqui frogs, some people love it. No offense, but
I don't know. You haven't. Yeah, no. There is nothing like hearing the cookie.
Yeah, cookie. And in Hilo, they're all over Hilo.
They're all over Hilo. Yes, and that's the thing is, I hope it never,
gets to Waimea, right?
It's in Honolulu, in particular.
Yeah. We haven't had them that I know of. Because I live in Manoa, which is fairly lush, and I worry too about that as well. So
no, I hope that never happens.
That's
the coqui invasion should stay away. So, well, Chad, I really appreciate you sitting down with us and kind of outlining the big things.
We're done. That's it.
Look, hey, I know you have 3,000 bills. I'm sure we could sit through all of them.
No, but I have so much more to say. Can you zoom in on that?
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to?
I will say two other things. A renewed interest in helping Native Hawaiian beneficiaries on the Hawaiian Homelands. They have $600 million that was granted 2 years ago. They are making progress, but it takes a long time. 29,000 people on that waiting list. People dying all the time. I've never seen so many bills dedicated to changing and really making more influential the way DHHL works. So I'll say that. One other thing.
Actually, well, is there talk of extending that
yes,
timeline to them?
it's complicated, but essentially the bill, you have to encumber the money by the end of this June, the end of the fiscal year. And while they've encumbered about $200 million, encumbered meaning they've got it mapped out. They know where it's got to go, but they haven't necessarily awarded a contract or a developer. But you still have to deal with the rest of the money. So I believe they're going to give them an extension for another year to do that, which will help them. It's very complicated. Those lands, my understanding is very few of them have any real infrastructure at all. Right. So if you're going to build something, what if you don't have water and power and so forth, or roads? But a whole lot of other things. Like could someone just say, I'll just take cash instead of waiting for the land?
And that's one of the proposals
that is one of the proposals. Yeah. Or if my grandfather dies, or my father, and I don't have 50% blood quantum, could we make a change? Maybe it's 1/32. I mean, they're going to work on ways, because otherwise you've been waiting. It's not your fault that you're waiting so long. Why punish what is essentially is an inheritance? Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One other thing, sunshine bills, good government bills.
I love, yes.
Didn't get
Civil Beat, we love the sunshine bills.
Didn't get as much play this year as it did last year because of the Kalani English and the Ty Cullen bribery convictions. But there are a couple of bills that I think will make government more transparent, more accountability. Probably the top one is the comprehensive public financing of campaigns. Essentially, taxpayers, if a candidate can get enough signatures and enough $5 or something, $10 from everybody, then the state will give them a lot of money to make them competitive against people that are running with all sorts of special interests, PAC money, and whatnot. So, yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be many moments throughout this session where you're going to want to catch your breath.
It's true, and but I'll say this: it's actually 3 months from tomorrow, and it's over.
Who's counting?
I'm counting.
Well, Chad, in those 3 months, we hope that you'll come back and visit with us and tell us a little bit more about it.
I will. Love this shirt, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Very nice. Who's the brand?
Sig Zane.
Sig Zane, of course.
The Big Island.
Guys from the Big Island, yeah.
Yes.
So. All right.
Thanks
Good
so
to go.
much. Appreciate it.